Okay. Uh, Good evening. My name is Yusef Davis, and I'm here to present on the psychological reactions to exercise and athletic injuries. I'm in Kenny's 443 class, and let's get started. So, as introduction, like I said, my name is Yusef Davis, and I'm a kinesiology sports management major here at University of Louisiana Lafayette. And my goal is really to go over the positives and negatives of exercise, injury, and rehabilitation that goes into like an athlete's daily life, and also kind of like what I researched. I found 10 articles that talked about the many different aspects of rehabilitation and how there's so many different types of exercise, and how there's a broad spectrum that we can talk about. There's a smaller section we can talk about, but I'll be talking about some specific things and some non-specific things in my presentation today. So, to go over what this slide says, this presentation will be going over the psychological positive and negative exercise and sports injuries, as well as how those negatively and positively affect athlete or injury rehabilitation. The articles I researched on all of these topics range between the topics of exercise injury and athlete psychology and the psychology of rehabilitation as a whole. And I'll also be adding a little bit of my personal anecdote due to my own injury-prone past as an athlete. I ran track for 7 years. Ran it since I was in middle school and kept going. And never stopped. Kept running during the summer and injured myself multiple times. And I can talk about the psychology that went into that myself as a personal anecdote. The next slide says, well, how do we define exercise? I mean, if you want to talk about exercise, you want to talk about the psychology of exercise and what's going on in people's heads. It's like paramount that you talk about exercise as a whole. Well, in my personal opinion, exercise is anything you do to physically improve your body, whether it be by function or look. That's what training is, exercise is. And of course, it varies in intensity and type. You have, like, just to name a couple of things in essence of time, anaerobic and aerobic exercise are two different things. I mean, when I researched an article by the man Peter Salmon, he said aerobic exercise, which involves prolonged activity of large muscle groups, such as running, swimming, and aerobic dancing, is integral to cardiovascular conditioning programs. And it's outweighed stuff like anaerobic exercise, which is like intense, short muscular activity, like weightlifting. I would say that it's like having multiple reps inside of a gym. Stuff that increases your muscular, I would say, tone is more anaerobic, something that really like burns fat. Sprinting would also be something to me that's anaerobic because of the buildup of lactic acid. So exercise is anything you do to literally physically improve your body. So what's some positives of this? Well, I mean, there's many positives of exercise. Mainly being like the change of your body that you are looking for is only attainable through working the body out. It's lots of research and there's many articles on what exercise can do to your body. But since we're talking about the psychological aspect of it, I found some emphasis in Mr. Salmon's article that is titled "Effects of Physical Exercise on Anxiety, Depression, Sensitivity to Stress," and it talks about how because physical activity increased in the society, it reduces mortality rate because it attacks those diseases that are huge, like stuff like heart disease and diabetes and stuff like that can be only directly and I would say they will only be directly affected in a good way by like constant exercise and good healthy eating. And as we know, type 2 diabetes is literally because of bad eating. The biggest benefactor of exercise is, like I said, those protected from heart disease and other diseases from unhealthy living. And according to Mr. Veal, regular exercise results in the physiological benefits and prevention of those heart disease and obesity, as well. So people love to do exercise, but the negatives, like saying it to the negatives, people aren't doing it. That's the problem we're having. People are not doing it. Exercise is literally what causes us to be able to function on a daily basis. If we do not work our muscles do not grow. Therefore, we do not function. Period. And according to Mr. Nelson, the consequences of insufficient physical activity in childhood and adolescence are considerable and have a potential to last throughout the lifespan. And like we said, we just go right back to the fact that obesity and just not being in a good health and a good way in your mind comes from being physically inactive. As you see later, most of the things I researched show that activity directly affects the positiveness. Exercise is directly affected by it directly affects your mental health, and it can positively affect that. But I also took into account that not everyone can exercise or will, and like I said, even when according to Mr. Salmon again, they lose people even when they become a part of these exercise programs. Even when people become a part of these exercise programs, they are lost. They end up being lost. So we're trying to keep these people into athletic programs, but something that's really pushing us away from that athletics is technology. We live in a convenient society. Our society is getting more and more convenient as time goes by. So because of that, it allows us to be lazier. And to give a direct quote from Mr. Fox, the incidence of inactivity is also high in many developed countries where technology is slowly removing exercise from lifestyles. And it's estimated around 40% of the middle-aged and elderly in the UK have been removed from those lifestyles. And the public health burden of inactivity is therefore problematic and expensive. And to go off on that quote, it'll probably be more expensive to get rid of. It'd probably get more expensive to get rid of technology than it would be to keep technology and try to figure out how it can play into exercise. It's hard, and that's what's continuing to plague us. Well, to go off exercise, what's injury? So we're talking about the psychological effects of exercise and injury. Well, what's injury? Well, injury I would define as anything that literally impedes your progress towards improving it. Anything that literally stops you from being able to improve your body would be like anything such as like a literal physical injury, like surgery, or something that literally like destroys your body, or I would even sometimes consider injury to be like a disease that any disease that stops you from being able to physically perform. Like diabetes eventually does lead to that. According to Utley, injury is a frequent consequence of being an athlete or participating in a recreational sport. Each year in the United States, it's estimated that 7 million child and adult sport participants sustain injuries, and more than 2 million sport injuries result in emergency room visit, surgery, and or rehabilitation. And that's just from those who actually exercise in a professional way or actually pursuing sport. Some people don't pursue sport and cure injuries. They cure injuries in the workforce. They cure injuries from being in the house. From what I've researched, injuries are usually detrimental to those mindsets of those athletes. But if they have a positive outlook on their own rehabilitation program and they have a good support system, they will be fine. That's how they get over those injuries. And some more negatives of injury in the essence of time include things like the fact that there is a fear of re-injuring yourself. There's a fear, there's this anxiety, there's this depression that comes with injury. And you either succumb to it or you don't succumb to it. It depends on the athlete's interpretation. That's what Iverson is saying here with this quote. It's that if the athlete negatively responds, then he will not be able to recover from his injury in a timely manner. But if they have a good support system and they're able to get past it, they're going to be fine. Sometimes the injury can be too severe. Tearing an ACL. I tore my hamstring. To tell the truth. The person I tore my own hamstring. So doing something like that makes it really hard for you to be like, okay, I'm really trying to get back out there. But if you don't have that motivation to want to run track, to want to do this thing for the rest of your life, it's going to be hard for you to really push forward after injury. So I know people who are injured and quit from doing what they do. But what comes with the negatives of injury comes with the rehabilitation. When you have a good rehabilitation program, when you have a process where people are literally teaching you and telling you, like, okay, constantly motivating you to continue to push through the program, then you will get better. I mean, the rehabilitation process has to be pushed forward in a positive way. Iverson says this, and Verger says this. He's literally saying that studies have shown that a lot of reactions that come from this treatment are like, it's a range of emotion that they have, but it diminishes over time if the recovery progresses in a positive way. And athletes should, according to Iverson, work with their stress management so that, you know, their negative responses continue to decrease and they continue to get better and better with their rehabilitation program. But what I've seen as well, the rehabilitation process has to be challenging because most athletes face a challenging sport, so they need a challenging other aspect as well. My overall thoughts are that exercise is a necessary part of the human existence, but it is being vehemently attacked by the convenience of the modern world. An injury is part of exercise, but it can prevent it in some cases and cured with an excellent rehabilitation program. The research that I went through basically gave me some insight on the psychological aspects of what's going on behind exercise. I mean, if you do not have motivations, if you do not have a good support system, then injury will be your downfall, and it can lead to worse mental problems. So that's most of my presentation, and here are my references. Thank you.